The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, burning through Earth's primitive communication arrays like acid through paper. Captain Alina Vasquez was 3 kilometers underground in the Atacama Desert, overseeing the extraction of rare Earth minerals when her unit screamed to life with an emergency broadcast that would change humanity's fate forever. The voice that emerged from the speakers was not human. It resonated with harmonics that made her teeth ache and her vision blur. The translation software struggled to keep up, spitting out fragments of meaning that chilled her to the bone. Primitive species of the 3rd planet. Solar designation. Terra. Your existence has been ... acknowledged. The consortium of 12 demands. Immediate compliance. Tribute schedule attached. Failure to comply results in extinction protocols. Elena's hands trembled as she shut down the mining operation and raced to the surface. Above ground, the world had gone mad. Every screen, every radio, every communication device on Earth was broadcasting the same message in hundreds of languages. The attachment that followed was even worse. A list of demands so extensive it would strip Earth bare within a generation. The consortium wanted 20% of all mineral wealth, 30% of all agricultural output, and 50,000 humans per year for what they termed cultural exchange programs. The translation for that last part was clearer than anyone wanted to admit. Slavery within hours. Alina found herself in an emergency session at the United Nations in New York. The Great Hall buzzed with panic as representatives from every nation tried to process what they had learned. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and their new neighbors had just served them an eviction notice. "We need a representative," announced Secretary General Martinez, his voice cutting through the chaos. Someone to go to their meeting point and negotiate terms. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Whoever went would likely never return. "I'll go," Alina said, standing from her seat in the observer section. She had been invited. As a mining expert, someone who could assess the feasibility of the tribute demands. Now she was volunteering for what might be humanity's final diplomatic mission. Captain Vasquez Martinez said, recognition dawning in his eyes. "You're not a diplomat." "No," Alina replied, thinking of the miners she had led through Cavins. And gas leaks, the crews she had brought home safe from the deepest, most dangerous places on Earth. "But I know how to survive in hostile environments, and I know what it means to negotiate when your life depends on it." The vote was unanimous. 3 days later, Alina stood in the cargo bay of humanity's most advanced spacecraft, the Prometheus, watching Earth shrink to a blue marble in the viewscreen. The ship was a hybrid of human engineering and alien technology, cobbled together from fragments of crashed vessels found in the outer system. It was their first and only ticket to the stars. The journey to the Nexus took 2 weeks. The consortium had provided coordinates to a massive space station built inside, a hollowed-out asteroid orbiting a dead star at the edge of known space. As the Prometheus approached, Alina felt the weight of 40 billion human lives pressing down on her shoulders. The station was ancient beyond measure, its surfaces carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Docking was automated, guided by tractor beams that seized their ship and pulled it into a berth alongside vessels of impossible design. Some were crystalline, others appeared to be grown rather than built, and a few seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once. Alina walked through the airlock wearing humanity's best environmental suit, carrying nothing but a translator device and a small recording unit. The corridor beyond was vast, designed for beings much larger than humans. The gravity was wrong, the air tasted of copper and ozone, and the walls hummed with energy that made her skin crawl. The assembly hall was a sphere 500 meters in diameter, its walls covered in viewing screens showing the representatives of the consortium. 12 species, each more alien than the last, looked down at her from their elevated positions. At the center of the sphere, a single chair waited. It was sized for a human. They had been expecting her. Alina walked to the chair and sat down, her boots barely touching the floor. Around her, the viewing screens flickered to life, showing the faces of beings that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Some were insectoid, others appeared to be made of living metal, and one seemed to be a collection of gas held together by electromagnetic fields. The one that spoke was the most unsettling of all. Prime Vextera was a crystalline being, its faceted body refracting light in patterns that suggested thoughts Alina couldn't follow. When it spoke, its voice was like breaking glass. Human representative, it said, the words somehow appearing directly in Elena's mind. You have been summoned to acknowledge the natural order. Your species will submit to consortium authority and provide the required tribute. This is not negotiable. Alina had prepared for this moment, rehearsing dozens of speeches during the long journey. She had arguments about human rights, about the value of diversity in the galaxy, about the potential for cooperation instead of subjugation. She had facts and figures about Earth's limited resources, appeals to mercy, and offers of alternative arrangements. Instead, she looked up at the 12 faces of galactic authority and said one word: no. The silence that followed was not empty. It was pregnant with shock, disbelief, and something that might have been fear. Alina could see it in their alien features, the way their attention focused on her with laser intensity. In the history of the consortium, no species had ever simply refused their demands. Prime Vexthera's crystalline form shifted, refracting light in agitated patterns. You misunderstand, human. This is not a request. This is the natural order of things. The strong rule, the weak serve. Your species lacks the power to resist. Alina stood up from the chair, her boots clicking against the metal floor. The sound echoed in the vast chamber, and she realized that every being present was holding their breath, waiting to see what the primitive human would do next. You're right, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the alien atmosphere. We don't have your technology. We don't have your weapons. We don't have your experience ruling the galaxy. She paused, looking directly at Prime Vexthera's faceted face. But we have something you've forgotten how to use. We have the word no, and we remember what it means. The crystalline being's form began to pulse with angry light. Your defiance will be remembered, human, when your species is extinct. The consortium has eliminated thousands of rebellious races. You will join them in oblivion. Alina nodded slowly. Maybe, but you'll remember us. Every time you look at an empty world where a species used to live, you'll remember the humans who said no. Every time you demand tribute from another race, you'll wonder if they learned from our example. Every time you sleep, you'll dream of the day a mining engineer from a backwater planet looked you in the eye and refused to kneel. She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the shocked silence. Behind her, the 12 faces of the consortium watched in stunned disbelief as a single human woman walked away from their ultimatum. Stop, Prime Vexthera. Voice cracked like breaking crystal. You cannot simply leave. The tribute must be paid. Alina paused at the threshold and looked back over her shoulder. "The tribute was just paid," she said quietly. "We gave you something you haven't had in millennia. We gave you doubt." The journey back to the Prometheus seemed longer than her walk in. Elena's hands were shaking as she cycled through the airlock, and she had to lean against the wall to steady herself. She had just declared war on the most powerful force in the galaxy with nothing but a word and the conviction that some things were worth dying for. As the Prometheus undocked from the ancient station, Elena activated her recording device and began her report to Earth. She had no idea if humanity would survive what was coming, but she knew they would face it on their feet, not on their knees. The word no had been spoken to the cosmos. Now they would see what it was worth. The return journey gave Elena time to think about what she had done. The consortium had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, building their empire on the simple premise that resistance was futile. They had never encountered a species that preferred extinction to subjugation. But as Elena stared out at the stars, she realized that humanity's response had been inevitable. They were the descendants of beings who had crawled out of caves to face saber-toothed tigers, who had crossed oceans in wooden boats, who had walked on their own moon before they knew if it was safe to breathe the air. The word no was written into their DNA. When the Prometheus finally entered Earth's solar system, Elena could see the changes that had begun in her absence. The orbital platforms were being converted into weapons. The asteroid belt was alive with mining ships, and the moon's surface was scarred with new construction. Humanity was preparing for war. Admiral Chen met her at the docking bay, his weathered face grim with the weight of command. "How did they take it?" he asked. Elena smiled, thinking of Prime Vexthera's shocked crystalline features. "About as well. As you'd expect. They're coming," the Admiral nodded. "Then we'd better get ready to remind them why humans are dangerous when they're cornered." As Elena walked through the corridors of the lunar base, she could hear the sounds of preparation echoing from every direction. Welders sparking, computers humming, voices calling out orders and encouragement. It was the sound of a species that had chosen to fight rather than surrender. The consortium would come with their advanced technology and their superior numbers. They would come expecting to find a broken species, ready to accept their place in the galactic order. Instead, they would find something they had never encountered before, a race that had said no to the cosmos itself and meant it. The reckoning, the consortium's response came 6 weeks after Elena's return to Earth. It wasn't a diplomatic message or a final ultimatum. It was a demonstration of power that lit up the night sky across 3 continents. Elena watched from the command center on lunar base as the alien fleet materialized at the edge of the solar system. 12 ships, each one the size of a city, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. The sensors couldn't get clear readings on their composition, but the energy signatures were unlike anything in human databases. "They're not hiding," observed Dr. Sarah Kim, the xenobiologist who had become Elena's closest advisor in the weeks since the Nexus meeting. "They want us to see them coming." Admiral Chen stood at the central display, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical readout. "How long until they reach Earth?" "At their current velocity, 18 hours, reported Lieutenant Morrison from the sensor station. "But sir, they're not heading for Earth." Elena felt her stomach drop. "Where are they going? Mars?" The screens switched to show the red planet, where humanity's newest colony struggled to maintain a foothold in the harsh environment. 2 million people lived in the domed cities of New Shanghai and New Cairo, mining the planet's resources and conducting research that was supposed to secure humanity's future among the stars. Now they were about to become an example. "We have to evacuate them," Alina said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it was impossible. The colony ships were too few, the distance too great, and the time too short. Admiral Chen's jaw tightened. "Send a message to Mars Command. Tell them to implement Protocol 7. Alina had never heard of Protocol 7, but Dr. Kim's face went pale. "Admiral, you can't be serious. The environmental damage alone. Would you rather have a damaged planet or a dead one?" Chen snapped, "Send the message." As the hours passed, Alina learned what Protocol 7 meant. Every human colony beyond Earth had been equipped with a final contingency, a last resort that would make any planet worthless to potential conquerors. On Mars, it meant destabilizing the polar ice caps and releasing the toxic gases locked in the planet's core. The consortium fleet arrived at Mars too. Find the planet wreathed in a poisonous atmosphere, its surface ravaged by violent storms. The 2 million colonists had retreated to the deepest bunkers, where they could survive for years if necessary. They had made their world uninhabitable rather than surrender it. The alien fleet hung in Martian orbit for 6 hours. Alina could imagine the conversations taking place aboard those massive vessels. The confusion and frustration of beings who had never encountered such scorched earth tactics. Finally, the lead ship transmitted a message that reached every communication device in the solar system. Prime Vexthera's crystalline voice echoed through the command center, distorted by rage and disbelief. "This is madness. You have destroyed your own world rather than accept our guidance." Alina activated the communication array and broadcast her response across all frequencies. "No, this is human. We'd rather live in hell than kneel in paradise." The silence that followed lasted for nearly an hour. When the consortium finally responded, it was with action rather than words. The fleet moved toward Earth, their weapons powering up for what everyone assumed would be the final battle of human civilization. That's when Elena's mining expertise proved its worth in ways no one had anticipated. "They're following the standard approach vector," she observed, studying the fleet's trajectory. "Same path our cargo ships used to avoid the asteroid belt." Dr. Kim looked up from her calculations. So, I've been thinking about what makes humans different from other species." Alina called up a holographic display of the solar system, highlighting the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. "Every other race the consortium has conquered probably developed on a single world, maybe colonized a few nearby planets. They think in terms of planets and systems." Admiral Chen caught on first. "But we think in terms of resources." "Exactly." Elena's smile was predatory. "We're not just inhabitants of the solar system, we're miners. We've been strip mining the asteroid belt for decades, and we know every rock, every trajectory, every gravitational anomaly." She highlighted a cluster of asteroids along the consortium's approach route. "Mining Platform 7 has been working this sector for 2 years. They've been using shaped nuclear charges to break up asteroids for easier processing." "You want to blow up asteroids?" Dr. Kim asked. "I want to redirect them." Elena's fingers danced across the holographic controls, showing trajectory calculations. That had been running through her mind for weeks. "The consortium expects us to fight them in space, ship to ship. But what if we turned the entire asteroid belt into a weapon?" The plan was insane, desperate, and exactly the kind of impossible gambit that humans specialized in. Over the next 12 hours, every mining platform, cargo hauler, and salvage ship in the asteroid belt received new orders. They weren't mining anymore. They were creating the largest improvised weapon in human history. The consortium fleet entered the asteroid belt, expecting to find scattered rocks and primitive mining equipment. Instead, they found a carefully orchestrated avalanche of stone and metal moving at precisely calculated velocities. Alina watched from the command center as the first wave of redirected asteroids slammed into the lead consortium vessel. The alien shields held for a moment, then overloaded under the sheer kinetic energy of millions of tons of rock traveling at orbital velocity. Direct hit on the primary vessel, reported Lieutenant Morrison. Their shields are fluctuating, but the real genius of the plan wasn't the immediate damage. It was the cascade effect that followed. Each destroyed asteroid created a cloud of debris that disrupted the trajectories of nearby rocks, creating an increasingly chaotic environment that no amount of advanced technology could navigate safely. The consortium fleet found themselves trapped in a three-dimensional minefield of their own making, unable to advance or retreat without risking catastrophic collisions. Their superior weapons were useless against targets too small and numerous to track, and their mighty shields couldn't deflect the sheer volume of material bearing down on them. Prime Vexthera's voice crackled over the communication channels, no longer imperious but desperate. "This is impossible. How did you coordinate such an attack?" Elena's response was broadcast across every frequency, ensuring that every being in the consortium fleet could hear her words. "You made the same mistake every bully makes. You assumed that being weak meant being helpless. The battle lasted for 3 days. The consortium fleet, designed to intimidate and overwhelm primitive species, found themselves outmaneuvered by converted mining equipment and repurposed cargo haulers. Human pilots, accustomed to navigating the treacherous asteroid belt, danced between the rocks with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. By the end of the 3rd day, 4 of the 12 consortium vessels had been destroyed, 3 more were heavily damaged, and the rest were trapped in a debris field that would take months to clear. The mighty armada that had come to teach humanity its place in the galactic order was reduced to sending distress signals. It was then that Alina played her final card. "Consortium fleet," she broadcast. "This is Captain Alina Vasquez of the Terran Mining Authority. We're prepared to offer you safe passage out of our system." The response came quickly, Prime Vexthera's voice tight with humiliation and rage. "You would allow us to leave after this ... this treachery?" "We're not treacherous," Alina replied calmly. "We're practical. You came here to collect tribute from a subjugated species. Instead, you found a species that fights back. The question now is whether you're smart enough to learn from this experience." There was a long pause before the crystalline being responded. "What are your terms?" Alina looked around the command center at the faces of the people who had helped her turn humanity's industrial infrastructure into a weapon of war. Dr. Kimpu had calculated the precise trajectories needed to turn asteroids into guided missiles. Admiral Chen, who had coordinated the defense of 3 planets with nothing but converted mining equipment. Lieutenant Morrison, who had tracked targets through the chaos of the asteroid belt with sensors designed to find or deposits. "Our terms are simple," Alina said. "Leave our system and don't come back. Tell the rest of the consortium that Earth is off limits. And remember what happened here the next time you decide to demand tribute from a species that knows how to say no." The evacuation took 2 weeks. Alina watched from the observation deck as the surviving consortium vessels limped away from the solar system, their hulls scarred and their pride shattered. They would return to their ancient civilization with A story that would be difficult to believe. A primitive species had not only refused to submit, but had actually defeated them, using nothing but mining equipment and stubborn determination. Dr. Kim joined her at the observation window as the last alien ship disappeared into hyperspace. Do you think they'll keep their word? Alina considered the question, thinking about the shock in Prime Vexthora's voice when the asteroids had begun their deadly dance. They'll keep their word about staying away from Earth, but more importantly, they'll never look at a primitive species the same way again. You think we changed something? I think we reminded them of something they'd forgotten. Alina smiled as she watched a mining ship return to its work among the asteroids, already beginning the long process of clearing the debris field they had created. The universe is full of species that will fight for their freedom if you give them the chance. They just needed someone to go first. In the weeks that followed, reports began filtering in from across the galaxy. Species that had paid tribute to the consortium for centuries were asking questions about the humans who had said no. Some were demanding renegotiation of their treaties. Others were simply refusing to pay, daring the consortium to respond with force they might no longer be able to project. The word no had become contagious, spreading through the galaxy like a virus of freedom, and at the center of it all was a mining engineer from Earth who had looked at the most powerful beings in the universe and reminded them that sometimes the smallest voice can shake the stars. Alina returned to her work in the Atacama Desert, overseeing the extraction of rare earth minerals that would help build humanity's future among the stars. But now she worked with the knowledge that the universe was a little bit freer than it had been before, and that sometimes the most important battles are won not with superior weapons or advanced technology, but with the simple courage to stand up and say no. The mining continued, but now it had a different purpose. Humanity was no longer just extracting resources from the earth beneath their feet. They were mining the strength to stand as equals among the stars, one determined word at a time. Asterisk.